start recording. If I had a graph in front of me, chances are, again, like most of the graphs we've done, we're going to put the cost on this axis, right? And we're going to put, in this question, months along the bottom, right? Because months, however many months you're in this like commitment or whatever, right, is going to dictate how much money you're going to end up paying eventually. Okay, so, and again, if I were to look at how I would label this graph, the X would go down here and the Y would be on the vertical one. Okay, so you're going to look at that. You're going to use this kind of like, again, we're getting back to how we visualized the multiple representations of a line, right? So like tables of values, the graphs, the words, and then the equation, right? We're trying to make the connection between all four of those, right? And so if this has some similarity for you, or right, or some familiarity, right? Drawing the graph at the first part might be helpful for you, right? Or at least the grid lines, right? So you can write, okay, well, cost goes on the Y, so that just must be, let Y be the cost. And let X be the number of months. Okay? Now we do this for the reason that we're not going to go through the motions of solving these questions. We still have to be able to like do the work, and at the end of the question be able to interpret the answer that we get, right? Because that's ultimately we want to answer something, right? So if I'm looking at the information that's provided to me and I'm reading through here, a satellite company charges $150 for installation and $30 per month, and I'm trying to make the equation look like y equals mx plus b because this is a line, right? That's what I'm trying to create. Then I'm going to try and reproduce that on these two lines for each of the two companies, right? And so for the first one, $150 for the installation, that sounds like, okay, I'm going to show up and it's going to be $150, right? So no matter what, you're going to pay $150. And then from that point forward, however long you stay in this commitment, right, you're going to have, okay, it's $30 per month. So it's $30. How much you pay depends on how long you're in the commitment, X. X represents the number of months. Okay, and then your cost is Y equals. Okay, so that's your equation, right? And now we're going to do this exact same thing for the other company. It's going to look identical. You're going to take your starting value, the installation fee, that's going to be on the end, right? And it's 35X. Okay, does anybody have any questions? We learned that maybe sometimes you guys can't type questions. I'm not sure. It doesn't make sense that some of you can and can't because I've added you all the same way, but I'm just throwing that out there. If you can't type and you have a question, you can turn your mic on and we can sort that out, okay? Okay, if we don't have any questions, we'll come out with the equation. That's very, very good, okay? Because I would argue after you've done 10 questions that those 5 steps, and you've drilled in those 5 steps, like they're not going to change. That's not the hard part of the question, it's the 5 steps. It's coming up with these equations is the hard part. Okay, and I might be nice to you and say, okay, I'll give you one question where I give you the equations and you show me how you can solve it, and then I'll be a little bit more, I'll make the questions a little harder, and I'll make you do a question like this where you got to come up with the equations. And then I'll tell me if you know what you're doing in both scenarios, right? Or at least allow me to isolate what you can do and what you can't and where the issues are. Okay. So once you have these two equations, I always just like writing them on top of one another, right? Just to summarize them for myself. So y equals 30x plus 150, right? And then I'm going to write y equals 35x plus 95. Okay? You can number those 1 and 2. And then you just solve it. Okay? Now this one's nice. Again, this is from this morning's lesson. You can see this is set up for you in a nice way. You've got a square equals a square, right? And so you just make these two equations equal to each other and solve. Okay? So 30x. I'll write it the same way I wrote it this morning, but I'll try to be a little more neater with this. 30x plus 150 is equal to y, which is equal to 35x plus 95, right? They're both equal to y. And therefore, if I scratch this out, they are equal to each other. Okay? And then you're free to solve. This is an ideal situation where you get y equals y equals. You just make them equal to each other, right? And then you just solve. Okay? So, by solve, I mean get everything, collect like terms, right? So, you're just going to try and get the numbers on one side and the variables on the other. Okay, so 30, I'm going to bring the 35x over. And I suppose I'll answer a question that maybe comes up. Maybe I'll do it the opposite way. It does not matter if you decide to take 35 and move it over, or if you take the 30 and move it over. It does not matter. And you can do it whatever order you want to do it in. The important part is that when you switch things over, they have to become the opposite sign. That's the only important rule. Okay? And we've seen 100 times as to why that is the case. When it goes to the other side, it has to switch signs, right? Because you got to do the opposite in order to move it. And what you do to one side, you got to do to the other. Okay, so maybe I'll do it that way. I'll move the 30 over that side, and then that'll get the next line will look like this. 150 is equal to 35x minus 30x plus 95. Okay, now I still have a number on the right side. I want to get it to the left side. Okay, so I'll do that. So in order to do that, I got a minus 95 from both sides, right? So 150 minus 95 is equal to 35x minus 30x, right? And then it's literally a calculator exercise at this point, right? When we talk about, you pull out your phone and you look at this and you go, okay, I'm just gonna type this into my calculator, and I'm just gonna, there's no thinking anymore. Okay, it's except for making sure you type in the right numbers, of course. Okay, so you get 55 is equal to 35 minus 30 is going to be 5 with an x on it. Divide both sides by 5. You get x. Okay. Remember what x stands for, right? It's the number of months. Okay. So I've now found x. You can pick either of these two equations up top here to solve for y, because they're both y equals. Okay, so you just bring this up here and you go y equals 30. I'm going to pick the first equation times 11 plus 150. Y is going to equal, why does my calculator keep disappearing? Right, so we're going to take 30 times 11, right, plus 150. Okay, 480. Okay, so then you're going to state, this is what I want you guys to get in the habit of doing. You're going to state your point of intersection is going to be 11 and 480. What that means is, after 11 months, both companies will cost $480. Okay. This is an important summary that you're going to make, right, for these questions. Is you're going to state this point of intersection, right? And then you're going to use it to answer where they are the same price after how long. right? And we're able to answer that because of the way we set up our variables, right? We can see that X is the number of months and Y is going to be the cost. And then when it asks you which is the better deal, that's kind of like a trick question, right? It's like, well, okay, depending on how many months you decide to stay with either of these two companies, it's going to be a better deal, right? Depends on how long you're with them, right? The connection I want you to make is that they are the same price after 11 months, right? Anywhere past 11, you go 12 months, one company is going to be better than the other. If you go 10 months, one of the companies is going to be better than the other, right? So that's kind of a trick question in the sense that, like, that the wording of that leads you to believe that there is one answer, but really there is two answers, right? And a third answer that where they're the same price. Okay, that's what I want you guys to illustrate. And I showed you this morning how to figure out which one was better, right? So you really only need to check one of these. So I'm going to plug in 10. Okay, so I'm just going to check which one's a better deal. Okay, so Y equals 30 times 10 plus 150. You're going to get a number. And you're going to check the other company for 10 months as well. Y equals 35 times 10 plus 95. Okay, whatever company comes out cheaper, that's the better deal for 10 months. Right? So you're going to get 300 plus 150, and you're going to get 350 plus 95 for 10 months. Right? So you're going to get 450 over here. And 445. So close, but still one's a better deal than the other one. Right? So I'm going to choose company B, or the equation 2, which came from the cable company for 10 months. And if you go over 11, remember 11 is going to be the same price. If you go 12 months, you're going to choose this company instead, company A, or the satellite company. Okay, the roles reversed there. If you go over 11 months, 12 months, you get the other company. Below 11 months, you get the other. Okay. Any questions?